Hello there, my name's Loretta Mighella and I'm the Director of Christian Aid. I haven't always worked in this sector. In fact, I started life as a criminal lawyer back in the 1980s. I was a defence lawyer defending people charged with very serious criminal offences, fraud, rape, murder and so on. I moved on from that to become a prosecutor, and then in 1990 I became a financial regulator, and I stayed in financial regulation for 15 years. For the last 5 years before joining Christian Aid, I was Chief Executive of the Financial Services Compensation Scheme. That's the scheme that looks after you if your bank goes bust or your insurance company or financial advisor. And in that role, I oversaw the payment of £21 billion to victims of financial failures of all kinds, and particularly the bank failures of 2008 and 9. Having heard about my background, you might wonder how I ended up being the Director of Christian Aid. And I think it's probably three things that have brought me here. The first is my faith journey. I was born into an Italian Catholic family on the Isle of Wight, and I was a practising Catholic until my late teens. Then I felt my faith ebbing away, but I always felt that something was missing, and I carried on looking for that through my 20s and 30s. But it wasn't until I was 40 and I walked into my current church, St Barnabas Church of England Church in Dulwich, that I found where I could express my faith most clearly, and I felt completely at home. In fact, I felt that I could put down a weight that I'd been trying to carry on my own for the previous 20 years. I think as a result of that, I began to look harder for meaning in my work and in my life, and I began to think more strongly about one day maybe leading a charity that actually had as its main objective a cause that I really cared about. But for the time being, I carried on in financial regulation. Then in my professional life, we hit the banking crisis, and that meant running the compensation scheme all of a sudden became a really much bigger, much more difficult job. But it's one with the people around me I managed to pull off, and it made me think I could be quite ambitious about my next role. Then in March 2008, I had a really big personal tragedy to contend with because I lost my brother. He died very, very unexpectedly, having been diagnosed only a month before with cancer of the tonsils. Losing him was the hardest thing I've ever had to contend with, but my faith kept me strong and people around me kept me strong. And I began to realise that actually he died at only 54. Life can be very short, and I wanted to be sure as I could be that I was making the very best I could of the gifts and talents that I'd been given. So I thought that the time was coming when I would need to try and find that job that would help me bring everything together. And it was about a year after that that I saw this wonderful job, the Director of Christian Aid, advertised in the paper. And I thought, what an amazing job that would be. How wonderful to bring your faith into the middle of your work, to work for a cause that's just so important, and have the opportunity to bring the skills that I'd built up over the very difficult roles that I'd had in previous jobs. So I applied, I prayed, I was really encouraged by my family, especially my daughter. She said, "Come on, Mum, you can do this." And anyway, to cut a long story short, here I am. Before I came to Christian Aid, I thought I had a good idea of what it was like. I knew that it was dedicated to the eradication of poverty. I knew it worked on a partnership model, helping people by giving them a hand up, not a handout, to find ways out of poverty, to achieve sustainable change. I knew all of that, and yet I wasn't prepared for the amazing reality of being here. I'm surrounded here by amazingly talented people, really dedicated people, really professional people who know what they're doing and who are really passionate about the cause that we're all fighting for, the eradication of poverty. I'm also really impressed and struck by the power of our partnership model. When I went on my very first visit as Christian Aid Director to see our work in the field, I went to Kenya and I saw our work in the slums around Nairobi, where we're doing sanitation work. I met our sanitation partner there, Margie Naufanisi, and I met the chief executive of that partner. And he talked to me about the depth of our partnership model. He said, "You're not necessarily the partner that gives us the most money all the time, but you're one of our favourite partners because you really understand what it takes to achieve sustainable change. And I think that's so important because with your support and your donations, you expect us quite rightly to achieve the very best we can to eradicate poverty. And that's what we're really, really geared up to do, and that's what we're doing really well.